Beneath the sands of southern Iraq, buried for thousands of years, lie clay tablets that tell a strange story. The Sumerians, the first people to invent writing, left behind accounts of powerful beings known as the Anunnaki. According to these ancient records, they came to Earth, helped shape early human civilization, and then, one day, disappeared. Tonight we're going to explore what these ancient texts actually say about why they departed and what it meant for the people left behind. Welcome. I'm glad you're here. Before we start, where are you right now? In bed with a lamp still on? On the couch as everything goes quiet around you? And what time is it? Late evening when you're winding down, or the middle of the night when sleep feels far away? Wherever you are, just notice your breathing for a moment. You don't have to change anything. Just feel the air moving in and out. Your body knows how to do this, how to settle, how to prepare for rest. Let your eyes close if they want to. Feel how your body rests against the bed or couch or chair. Your shoulders, your back, your legs, everything supported. Nothing you need to do right now. Here's what makes this story so compelling. The Sumerian tablets don't just describe gods who ruled from temples. They describe beings who descended from the sky, who walked among humans, who made decisions about kingdoms and harvests. And then, according to these texts, something changed. The Anunnaki began to withdraw. Their presence became less direct. The connection between heaven and earth grew distant. Now, scholars interpret this in different ways. Most archaeologists see this as mythology, as stories that reflected changing religious beliefs over time. Perhaps the shift from personal gods to more distant deities, or metaphors for political changes as city-states rose and fell. And that makes sense. Ancient cultures often expressed historical transitions through divine narratives, but some researchers read these same tablets differently. They point to the specific details, the way the texts describe physical departure rather than symbolic absence, the accounts of sky vehicles and celestial journeys. They ask, what if the Sumerians were recording an actual event, something they witnessed and tried to preserve in clay? Tonight we'll look at both possibilities. We'll read what the tablets actually say, consider the different interpretations, and let you decide what feels right. We'll take our time, moving slowly through this ancient mystery, the way you'd explore forgotten ruins, carefully, thoughtfully, with curiosity. If you're enjoying this, I'd appreciate if you'd like the video and subscribe. It helps other people find these stories and lets me keep making them. Now let everything else fade away. Your breath is slowing down naturally. Your thoughts are starting to drift. We have time together, plenty of time to examine this mystery from every angle, to wonder about what these ancient people were trying to tell us across thousands of years. The tablets have waited this long. They can wait a little longer while you get comfortable. Ready? Long before cities rose from mud and stone, the land between the rivers rests in a different rhythm. The air feels wider then, untouched by smoke or incense. The ground is soft beneath bare feet, cool in the early morning, warming slowly as the sun climbs. Wind moves freely across open plains, carrying the scent of wet earth, reeds, and distant water. Silence is not empty here. It is full. It listens. When the earth is younger in human terms, but already unimaginably old, geological patience shapes everything. Rivers do not hurry. They drift, curve, and change course over centuries. Sediment settles grain by grain. Layers build quietly beneath the surface. The land does not know it is preparing for history. It only follows gravity, rain, and time, long before writing, long before names. The planet is already telling its story. Perhaps this is the most difficult world for modern minds to imagine. A world without borders, without temples, without permanent marks of ownership. When the Tigris and Euphrates move freely, they flood and retreat according to seasonal memory. They bring life, and they take it away. Fields appear, then vanish. Nothing stays fixed for long. Maybe this instability teaches early humans something essential: patience. When the climate shifts slowly over millennia, rainfall patterns change almost imperceptibly. Grasslands expand, then contract. Marshes breathe in and out with the seasons. Animals migrate along ancient paths written into instinct rather than maps. Humans follow quietly, learning the language of stars and shadows. Perhaps they do not yet see themselves as separate from the land. Perhaps identity is still fluid, like water. Look up now, into that ancient sky. The stars burn with the same cold persistence they do today. Orion rises. The Pleiades shimmer faintly. Long before they are named, they already guide movement and memory. When the night deepens, the sky feels close enough to touch. Maybe this closeness plants the earliest seeds of divine imagination. Maybe not, but the sky is always watching. The land itself becomes a silent witness. Stone remembers pressure. Clay remembers water. Sand remembers wind. These materials hold no opinions, yet they record everything. Footsteps fade, but the ground adjusts. Fires burn out, but ash changes the soil. Even silence leaves a trace. The earth does not forget, it only waits. When humans gather in small groups, their lives remain light upon the land. Temporary shelters rise, then fall. Tools are carried, not stored. Knowledge lives in bodies, not objects. Skills pass through watching hands and quiet repetition. Perhaps this is why nothing survives in abundance. Memory moves mouth to ear, parent to child, always vulnerable to loss. Time flows differently here. Without calendars, seasons are felt, not measured. Hunger and fullness mark cycles more clearly than years. When elders speak, they speak of patterns, not dates. Stories are shaped to be remembered easily, repeating rhythms, familiar images. Maybe myth begins here, not as fantasy, but as survival. Silence returns often. Long stretches pass without event. The land breathes. The rivers murmur softly. Insects hum at dusk. At night, the world cools, and stillness spreads. It is in these quiet spaces that listening deepens. Perhaps humans learn to hear what is not spoken. Perhaps they learn to imagine voices beyond their own. Long before gods descend, humans already look upward, not in worship yet, but in curiosity. Storms arrive without warning. Lightning splits the sky. Floodwaters erase familiar ground overnight. Maybe power feels external then. Maybe agency feels shared with forces unseen. This sense of dependence lingers, waiting for language. The forgotten world is not empty. It is full of preparation. Every flood reshapes the future. Every dry season teaches restraint. Every star crossing the sky plants a question. When the first cities finally rise, they will rise on foundations laid by thousands of unrecorded lives. And when gods are later named, they will inherit meanings older than their names. As we drift forward, slowly, gently, we leave this pre-human memory behind. But it does not disappear. It sinks beneath the surface, supporting everything that follows. And soon, very soon, the rivers themselves will learn to hold names. The rivers move first in the story. They always do. At dawn, mist lifts slowly from the water. cool against the skin, carrying the faint smell of silt and growing reeds. Light touches the surface in fragments, broken reflections that drift and reform. The current slides past with quiet confidence. It does not rush, it does not stop. It remembers where it has been, long before temples or tablets. The Tigris and Euphrates shape the land through repetition. When the snow melts in distant mountains, water swells and travels patiently south. Floods arrive without warning, spreading across the plains, leaving behind dark, fertile soil. When the waters retreat, they reshape borders that no one has named yet. Perhaps this unpredictability teaches early people humility. Perhaps it teaches cooperation. Maybe it teaches both. When humans return season after season, they begin to notice patterns. Certain bends flood more gently. Certain banks hold longer. The rivers begin to feel familiar, not controlled, but known. Long before writing, knowledge lives in observation. Feet learn which ground holds firm. Hands learn where reeds grow strongest. Memory settles into the body. The climate continues its slow negotiation with the land. Summers grow heavy and dry. Winters cool the nights. Winds carry dust across open ground, settling on skin and clothing. The sun can be unforgiving. Shade becomes precious. Water becomes sacred, even before it is called divine. Perhaps reverence begins as gratitude. When the night arrives, the sky opens wide. Stars feel immense, steady, unchanging. The Milky Way stretches overhead like a pale river of its own. People lie close to the ground, listening to insects, watching constellations drift. Long before gods are mapped to stars, the sky already suggests order. Cycles repeat, seasons return. Maybe meaning feels close. Silence plays an active role here. Long stretches pass with only wind and water speaking. In this quiet, attention sharpens. Subtle changes matter. A bird's absence signals danger. A new plant signals opportunity. Perhaps intelligence grows from listening rather than speaking. Perhaps wisdom grows from waiting. When small camps begin to linger longer near the rivers, something shifts. Movement slows. Temporary becomes semi-permanent. Hearths are reused. Paths are worn faintly into the earth. No one announces a beginning. There is no ceremony. Life simply settles, gradually, almost unnoticed. The rivers are not just water. They are teachers. They bring life. But they also destroy without apology. Floods take lives as easily as they nourish fields. This duality leaves an imprint on thought. Power becomes something respected, feared, negotiated with. The river is not just a resource, but a force with intention, even if that intention is imagined. Perhaps this is when naming begins, not written names yet, but spoken ones, sounds shaped by breath and habit. The river becomes more than movement. It becomes a presence. When you name something, you acknowledge relationship. Maybe this is the first step toward gods. Long before the Anunnaki appear in clay, the world already feels inhabited by forces larger than human will. Storms decide fate. Floods reset plans. Stars mark time. The land teaches that control is temporary. Balance is everything. These lessons settle deep, ready to surface later as myth, ritual, and reverence. As generations pass, knowledge accumulates quietly. Children grow up knowing where water rises, when fish appear, how long the floods last. This knowledge binds people together. Cooperation becomes survival. Shared memory becomes power. Perhaps society is born not from ambition, but from necessity. The rivers continue their work, indifferent to names or prayers. yet they hold space for both. Soon, humans will press marks into clay shaped by these same waters. Soon, memory will harden into form. And when that happens, the land that taught patience will finally begin to speak back. The land continues its quiet rhythm. Morning light spreads gently across open ground, revealing no walls, no streets, no monuments reaching for the sky. The earth feels soft underfoot, shaped by water and wind rather than intention. Smoke rises briefly from small fires, then dissolves into the air. Nothing here is meant to last. Everything is meant to move. Long before symbols are pressed into clay, memory lives only in living bodies. Stories travel slowly, carried by voice and gesture. When elders speak, others listen closely. Because nothing is written down, each telling matters. Each mistake changes the future. Perhaps this fragility sharpens attention. Perhaps it creates reverence for words spoken aloud. When the sun climbs higher, heat settles across the plain. The smell of dry grass mixes with distant water. Hands are busy with simple tasks, weaving, shaping, preparing food. Tools are few, carefully made, carefully kept. There is no surplus of objects, only what can be carried, only what is needed now. Silence returns often. After conversation fades, after work pauses, the world grows still again. Wind moves across reeds. Insects hum softly. The land listens. Maybe humans listen too. In this quiet, thoughts stretch. Questions form without answers. Why floods come? Why stars move? Why life feels guided by forces unseen? When night falls, darkness is complete. No lamps line paths. No fires burn long. The sky dominates everything. Stars feel closer, brighter, endless. The moon changes shape without explanation. Time is sensed through repetition rather than record. Nights feel long. Seasons feel heavy with meaning. Perhaps this is when imagination deepens. Without written certainty, possibility remains open. Events are explained through story rather than evidence. A storm is not just weather, but intention. A flood is not just water, but judgment or renewal. The world feels alive, responsive, aware. Maybe this worldview feels natural when survival depends on attention. When children grow, they inherit memory rather than history. They learn through watching, through repeating, through listening to stories told many times before. Each generation adds something small, removes something else. Nothing stays fixed. Memory flows like the rivers themselves. The absence of tablets means absence of permanence. Disputes are settled through agreement, not law. Authority rests in experience, not record. Elders hold influence because they remember more, not because they command, but because they have seen patterns repeat. Wisdom is slow here. It accumulates gently. Perhaps this is why writing changes everything later. Writing freezes memory. It fixes meaning. It removes flexibility. But in this world, before tablets, meaning remains fluid. Stories adapt to circumstance. Truth is shaped by need. Maybe this flexibility keeps communities alive. Maybe it also limits growth. When death comes, it leaves little behind. No names carved, no dates marked, only absence. Life continues around it. Memory fades quickly without markers. The land absorbs loss without comment. Perhaps this teaches acceptance. Perhaps it teaches impermanence more clearly than any philosophy. Long before gods are formalized, the sense of higher order already exists. Not organized, not named, but felt. The sky feels intentional. The land feels responsive. The river feels aware. These feelings wait patiently for structure. They wait for language that can hold them. As populations slowly grow, memory stretches thinner. Stories become harder to preserve. Disagreements arise. Who remembers correctly? Who decides? Perhaps this tension creates the need for record. Perhaps writing emerges not from curiosity, but from necessity. Clay lies everywhere beneath the feet, soft when wet, hard when dry. It holds impressions easily. It forgets slowly. No one knows yet what it will become, but the material waits, patient, ready. The land has always prepared quietly. Soon, marks will be pressed into this clay, not to tell stories at first, but to count, to track, to control. And once marks exist, memory will no longer drift freely. History will begin to hold. And when it does, the gods will finally have names. The clay rests quietly beside the riverbank. It is cool when touched, smooth beneath the fingers, heavy with water and time. When pressed, it accepts shape without resistance. When left alone, it remembers every impression. This simple material waits patiently, unaware that it will soon carry voices across thousands of years. Long before writing becomes storytelling, humans turn to clay for survival, counting grain, marking exchange, recording debt. These early impressions are practical, not poetic. Small wedges, simple lines, repetition without ornament. Yet something profound begins here. Memory no longer depends entirely on breath or recall. It gains weight. It gains endurance. When archaeologists excavate early Sumerian sites such as Uruk and Eridu, they find these tablets buried beneath layers of habitation. Many date to around 3300 BCE. The marks are uneven. Pressures vary. Some signs overlap clumsily. This is not refined writing, yet. It is learning in motion, humanity teaching itself how to remember. The earliest tablets do not speak of gods. They speak of barley, sheep, measures, storage. Administration grows quietly. Writing emerges not from myth, but from necessity. Yet necessity reshapes consciousness. What can be written can be revisited. What can be revisited can be controlled. Perhaps this is when authority begins to change form. Clay dries slowly in the sun. As it hardens, it becomes resistant to change. The past is fixed. Unlike spoken memory, it does not adjust with context. It does not soften with emotion. It holds. Perhaps this permanence feels comforting. Perhaps it feels dangerous. Either way, it alters the relationship between humans and time. When symbols begin to represent sounds rather than objects, writing crosses a threshold. Language enters matter. Ideas gain surface. Names appear. Titles follow. Places are fixed. And eventually, beings greater than humans are recorded, not imagined into existence, but stabilized by inscription. The transition happens quickly. Within a few centuries, tablets shift from accounting to hymns and prayers. This suggests that stories already existed, circulating orally, waiting for a surface to hold them. Clay does not invent belief, it anchors it. Perhaps the gods feel more real once they can be written. Archaeologists note how early divine references appear alongside economic records, offerings listed, temples accounted for, the sacred and the practical share space. This blending feels significant. The divine is not separated from daily life. It is integrated, measured, recorded. When the first names of gods appear, they are written plainly. No elaborate description, no explanation. The scribes assume familiarity. The gods are already known. Writing does not introduce them. It preserves them. This detail unsettles modern readers. Familiarity implies presence long before inscription. Perhaps this is why the Anunnaki, emerge fully formed in the record. They do not evolve slowly through myth. They appear as established authorities, administrators, judges. This suggests memory older than writing. Clay becomes a vessel, not an origin. The texture of these tablets matters. You can see where fingers paused, where a stylus slipped, where correction was impossible. Writing required intention. There was no erasing. Each mark committed meaning permanently. Perhaps this weight encouraged restraint. Words chosen carefully, claims recorded cautiously. Modern museums display these tablets behind glass. Light glances across their surfaces. Shadows settle into grooves. The impressions remain sharp after millennia. Stone may erode. Clay endures. Memory survives not because it is loud, but because it is held. Dating methods confirm continuity. Stratigraphy, carbon analysis of surrounding material, comparative script evolution. Science supports the timeline. Writing emerges steadily, expands rapidly, yet motive remains speculative. Did scribes feel awe? Did they sense history beginning? Or did it feel like routine work? Perhaps this is the quietest revolution humanity ever experienced. No announcement, no ceremony, just marks pressed into earth. Yet once memory becomes external, humanity changes direction. Knowledge accumulates faster. Authority concentrates. Systems grow complex. Writing allows gods to act across time. A command issued centuries earlier still holds power. A law survives its maker. A ritual repeats unchanged. The divine gains endurance beyond presence. Perhaps this is why gods later seem distant. Writing replaces immediacy with continuity. Questions remain unresolved. Why did certain symbols become sacred? Why were some stories preserved while others vanished? Who decided what was worthy of inscription? Archaeology cannot answer intention. It offers context, not consciousness. Still, something undeniable begins here. Clay teaches humans to think beyond lifespan, to speak to the future, to imagine permanence. And once that door opens, gods can leave without disappearing, because when presence fades, memory remains. The first marks in clay do not just record grain. They record the moment humanity learns to hold time, and once time can be held, it can be released, transmitted, remembered, forgotten, recovered. Soon, within these hardened lines, the Anunnaki will take shape not as fleeting stories, but as enduring forces. And the clay, once only earth, will become witness to arrival, authority, and eventual withdrawal. As we move forward, the tablets will grow more confident, the gods more active, the cities more ordered. But it all begins here, quietly, with damp clay, patient fingers, and memory learning how to stay. The tablets change in tone here. The clay is the same, cool, firm, quietly patient. But the markings deepen. Lines become more deliberate. Symbols begin to cluster into meaning that goes beyond counting. When light falls across these tablets in a museum hall today, shadows settle into the grooves, making the signs feel almost alive. Something new is being spoken. Long before the Anunnaki are fully described, their presence is hinted at. Names appear beside offerings. Titles emerge that suggest authority beyond kings. When the earliest god lists are compiled, scholars notice repetition. Certain beings appear again and again, not as metaphors for rain or wind alone, but as administrators of order. Perhaps this reflects a society becoming more complex. Perhaps it reflects memory of something once experienced. The Anunnaki are not introduced with ceremony. They simply appear, as if they were already known. Tablets describe them as powerful, as judges, as beings who determine fate. The language is calm, matter of fact. The Anunnaki are not just gods, but a collective, a group. Their authority feels structured, hierarchical, familiar. Maybe this familiarity is what unsettles modern readers. When archaeologists translate these texts, they notice how often the Anunnaki are associated with the sky and the earth together. They move between realms. They descend. They ascend. They decide. This movement becomes a defining trait. The gods are not distant abstractions. They are active, involved, present. Perhaps this reflects how power was understood then. Perhaps it reflects something else. Now, a small story unfolds quietly within the history of discovery. In the late 19th century, when European excavators work among the ruins of ancient Mesopotamia, they uncover thousands of tablets buried beneath collapsed temples. One archaeologist lifts a tablet still damp from the earth. Its surface is worn smooth by time. As it dries, symbols sharpen. A name becomes legible. Anu, then another, Enlil. The Anunnaki are there, waiting. The moment is understated. No announcement, just recognition. Something long silent has spoken again. This rediscovery changes understanding slowly. Scholars begin comparing texts across sites. Patterns emerge. The Anunnaki are consistent across regions. This consistency raises questions. Oral tradition alone rarely preserves such precision. Writing explains part of it, but perhaps shared experience explains another part. Some believe these gods represent natural forces organized into narrative. Others suggest memory of leadership, elevated over time. The tablets do not clarify. They simply repeat. When you read the descriptions, the Anunnaki feel administrative. They assign roles. They establish laws. They oversee humanity. This is not chaotic divinity. This is structured governance. The gods were not just worshipped, but consulted, appealed to, held responsible. Perhaps this mirrors early city life. Perhaps gods evolved to reflect bureaucracy, or perhaps bureaucracy imitates gods. Sensory details emerge from the texts themselves, references to bright light, to thunderous voices, to awe and fear mixed with familiarity. These descriptions are sparse, controlled. They do not exaggerate. This restraint feels important. Myth usually embellishes. These texts often do not. Maybe the scribes felt no need to persuade. Maybe belief was already assumed. Unanswered questions linger gently. Why do the Anunnaki appear fully formed rather than evolving slowly in myth? Why are they described as a group rather than singular creators? Why do they govern rather than merely inspire? Archaeology offers context, not closure. The mystery remains open, patient. As centuries pass, references to the Anunnaki increase. Their roles become clearer. Their authority expands. Humanity's dependence deepens. Yet even here, subtle hints of distance appear. The gods feel powerful, but not eternal in presence. Something about them suggests movement, transition, perhaps departure. The tablets hold all of this without judgment. They do not explain motivation. They do not justify authority. They record. That is their power. They allow us to see the moment when gods step into history, not with thunder, but with quiet certainty. And as the Anunnaki take shape in clay and memory, their influence will soon spread across every aspect of life. Cities will rise beneath their gaze, laws will carry their names, and humanity will begin living, fully, in a world overseen by the divine. The city wakes slowly. Morning light slips between low walls, pale and soft, touching mud brick and reed. The air carries warmth already, mixed with the smell of water and grain. Footsteps begin to sound on packed earth. Fires breathe back to life. This is a world learning rhythm, guided by something more than instinct. Long before empires, knowledge arrives in fragments. The tablets describe it carefully. The Anunnaki bring order, not abundance alone. They introduce measures, boundaries, calendars. Time becomes something shared rather than felt. Days are counted, seasons marked. The future becomes predictable enough to plan. Perhaps this is the greatest gift. Perhaps it is also the most dangerous. When the texts speak of the me, the divine principles of civilization, their tone changes. The me are not objects. They are concepts, kingship, law, craft, music, truth, deceit, even sorrow. The tablets suggest these were once held by the gods, then granted to humanity. The Anunnaki were not just teachers, but custodians of balance. Knowledge was not free. It was allocated. Imagine the moment this knowledge takes root. A field measured for the first time. Irrigation channels cut with intention. Water directed rather than endured. The land responds generously. Harvests grow steadier. Populations rise. With stability comes hierarchy. Roles solidify. Priests, scribes, laborers. The city breathes differently now. When the calendar is introduced, the sky becomes a clock. Stars no longer just inspire wonder. They organize life. Planting follows celestial cycles. Festivals align with solstices. The heavens feel closer, more involved. Perhaps this reinforces the sense that the gods are above, watching, timing everything. Maybe the Anunnaki feel present in every measurement. The texts describe kings receiving authority from the gods. Power flows downward. Human rule becomes legitimate only through divine sanction. This creates order. It also creates dependence. When things go wrong, famine, flood, illness, the gods must be consulted. Rituals multiply, offerings increase, silence becomes uncomfortable. Knowledge transforms daily life quietly. Writing spreads, accounting grows precise, trade expands, cities communicate, the world shrinks slightly. Yet with every gain, something else recedes. Spontaneity fades, flexibility narrows. Perhaps freedom feels different now. Perhaps security replaces it. When archaeologists examine artifacts from this period, seals, tools, standardized bricks, they notice uniformity. Measurements repeat across regions. This suggests shared instruction, shared values, shared systems. Some believe this reflects cultural exchange. Others wonder how such coordination emerges so quickly. The evidence remains open. Sensory traces remain everywhere. The smooth polish of stone tools, the warmth of sun-baked brick, the faint echo inside early temples. These spaces are not vast yet. They are intimate, close to the ground, designed for presence rather than spectacle. The gods are near. Unanswered questions hover gently. Did people welcome this knowledge without hesitation? Did some resist? Were their voices questioning divine authority? The tablets rarely record dissent. Perhaps it existed only in whispers. Perhaps it was not recorded. Archaeology cannot hear silence clearly. As knowledge spreads, dependence deepens. The Anunnaki become embedded in systems. Law carries their names. Justice reflects their will. Humanity grows, but does not feel autonomous. Power is borrowed, always conditional. Perhaps this is why later texts hint at tension. The relationship is productive, but fragile. When you step back, the pattern feels familiar. Knowledge brings growth. Growth brings complexity. Complexity brings strain. The gods provide structure, but structure demands maintenance. Rituals intensify. Prayers lengthen. The divine feels both generous and distant. Maybe something is shifting already. The gifts of the Anunnaki reshape the world permanently. Civilization stands now, stronger, taller, louder. Yet beneath it, older rhythms persist. Rivers still flood, stars still move. Silence still waits between moments. The land has not changed its nature, only its surface. As we move forward, the cities will rise higher, the gods will watch more closely, and the balance between guidance and control will be tested. For now, knowledge rests in human hands, heavy, powerful, and quietly preparing the next chapter of this long story. The city wakes before the sun fully rises. Pale light spreads slowly across mud brick walls, touching edges softened by time and wind. The air feels cool, almost tender, carrying the scent of river water and dust. Footsteps sound faintly in narrow streets. Fires are coaxed back to life. Nothing is hurried. The city knows its rhythm. Imagine standing at the city's edge at dawn. You see rooftops clustered closely together, sharing warmth, sharing shadow. Walls curve rather than stretch straight. Paths bend gently, shaped by habit rather than plan. This is not a city designed to impress from afar. It is designed to function, to endure, to hold people close. When the sun climbs higher, activity increases without urgency. Vendors prepare goods. Children move between doorways. Animals are guided carefully through streets already familiar with their presence. Life here feels practiced, repeated, learned over generations. Stability is not dramatic. It is quiet. At the city's center, the ziggurat rises patiently. Its steps are wide, deliberate, worn smooth by countless ascents. Stone and brick hold warmth by midday, release it slowly by evening. This structure is not decorative. It is directional. It points upward, not sharply, but with intention. Earth below, sky above, movement between realms made visible. Priests ascend the steps slowly. Pace matters here. Breath is measured. Offerings are carried with care. Bowls of grain, jars of oil, woven cloth dyed with patient labor. Incense burns softly. Smoke rises straight when the air is still, bends gently when the wind passes. Silence gathers near the top. The Anunnaki are believed to observe from above, not constantly intervening, but watching. Their presence is assumed rather than questioned. This assumption shapes behavior. Actions feel witnessed. Decisions feel weighted. Order is internalized. Perhaps this is the true power of belief. Not fear, but consistency. The city's success depends on coordination. Irrigation channels branch outward like veins, directing water across fields with precision. Gates open and close at measured times. Storage rooms are sealed and counted. Scribes record transactions on clay tablets drying in the sun. Knowledge circulates. Nothing is accidental. Imagine a scribe seated cross-legged in shade. His stylus presses gently into clay. Symbols form steadily. He pauses occasionally, not from uncertainty, but care. Errors cannot be erased. Every mark commits memory to matter. Authority flows through his hands, quietly, without spectacle. When night approaches, the city softens. Fires glow faintly. Lamps flicker inside homes. Voices lower, above everything. Stars emerge. They feel closer here, unfiltered by distance or light. The sky becomes a map. Priests observe carefully. Certain stars signal planting. Others mark festivals. Astronomy is not curiosity, it is structure. The heavens are read as instruction. Cycles repeat. Movements confirm order. The same stars return each year. This predictability reassures. The Anunnaki are associated with this consistency. Their authority feels cosmic rather than personal. They are not emotional gods. They are stabilizing ones. Imagine a family preparing the evening meal. Hands are rough from labor. Movements are efficient. Children listen as elders speak of gods who once came down, who still watch from above. These stories are not told with drama. They are routine, like weather, like seasons, like law. The achievements of this civilization are remarkable, yet understated. Writing is integrated into daily life. Mathematics governs trade. Architecture responds to climate. Art appears on seals and walls. Small figures carved with care. Beauty exists, but it serves meaning rather than spectacle. Modern scholars describe this period as a miracle of organization. Cities with tens of thousands functioning cohesively. Resources managed. Conflict minimized through codified law. Yet beneath this success, dependence deepens. Everything traces upward to divine sanction. Authority is borrowed, never owned. The Anunnaki are not distant myths. They are embedded in systems. Law carries their names. Justice reflects their will. Humanity grows. But autonomy feels limited. Power is conditional. This arrangement holds, but it requires maintenance. Stars continue their patient movement overhead. Cosmic time advances steadily while human time repeats daily cycles. The contrast is quiet but powerful. The city feels permanent from within, from above. It is momentary. Perhaps someone notices this difference. Perhaps not. Most people are occupied with living. Stability feels eternal when experienced day by day. Questions arise only when rhythm breaks. Rituals occur regularly. Offerings are precise. Processions follow established routes. The gods are honored through repetition. Faith becomes habit. Habit becomes structure. Structure becomes identity. Yet subtle signs appear even at this height. Rituals grow slightly longer. Offerings increase marginally. Calendars grow crowded. These changes do not alarm. They are adjustments. But adjustments suggest tension. Something requires more reassurance than before. The city does not sense decline. It senses responsibility. Maintaining order feels like work. The gods must be pleased continuously. Balance feels delicate. Perhaps this awareness is the cost of complexity. As night deepens, the city sleeps beneath the same sky that watched its rise. Stars shine without judgment. Wind moves gently across rooftops. Stone holds the day's warmth. Silence settles between walls. This is the golden age, not loud, not triumphant, but functioning, coordinated, confident. Life unfolds beneath watchful skies with practiced ease. Yet beneath stone and ceremony, questions remain unspoken. Why must effort increase? Why must order be reinforced? Why does presence feel slightly less immediate than before? These questions rest quietly, like water beneath clay, not yet visible, not yet disruptive, waiting. And as the city breathes through another night, something hidden continues to gather, preparing to reveal itself in ways not yet understood. The sun rises slowly over the city, and with it, authority awakens. Light touches the upper walls of the palace first, pale gold against weathered brick. Inside, the air is cool, still holding the night. A king stirs from sleep, not as a god, but as a man who must soon become a voice for something greater than himself. Imagine this morning unfolding. Servants move quietly. Water is poured for washing. Linen is laid out with care. The king's hands are steady, practiced. He has performed this ritual countless times. Before he eats, before he speaks, he pauses. A short prayer, not long, not dramatic, simply acknowledgement. His power is not his own. When he steps outside, the city responds. Heads bow. Conversations soften. The sound of sandals on stone echoes briefly, then fades. The king walks beneath banners marked with divine symbols. These are reminders. To him, as much as to others, he rules only by favor of the Anunnaki. This is how kingship works here. Authority flows downward, from the heavens to the gods, to the king, to the people. The tablets describe it plainly. The king was not just ruler, but intermediary. He listens upward, then speaks downward. Law becomes sacred because it originates beyond humanity. Perhaps this makes obedience easier. Perhaps it makes dissent unthinkable. Now, a small story settles into focus. On this day, a dispute waits in the courtyard. Two farmers stand quietly, eyes lowered. A boundary disagreement, irrigation water diverted, crops at risk. The king listens patiently, scribes record every word, witnesses speak. The process is calm, measured. When the judgment is delivered, it is framed not as opinion, but as divine will. The Anunnaki have decided. Order is restored. The farmers leave. Relief mixes with resignation. The decision may not please both, but it feels final, sacred. This is the strength of divine kingship. Conflict dissolves into acceptance. Perhaps this stability fuels growth. Perhaps it suppresses something human. At midday, the heat settles heavily. The city slows. Markets quiet. Shadows shorten. The king retreats indoors. There are offerings to oversee, messages to receive from temple priests, astronomical observations to review. The sky matters even here. Certain days require certain actions. Timing is everything. When evening approaches, ritual returns. The king ascends the temple steps. Incense burns softly. The scent lingers, warm and sweet. Priests chant quietly. The stars begin to emerge. Offerings are presented on behalf of the city. Gratitude, appeasement, request. The relationship feels transactional, yet deeply reverent. Philosophically, this system reflects a profound idea. Power is legitimate only when it is not personal. The king is strongest when he claims the least ownership. The Anunnaki are not just gods, but a framework that prevents chaos. Perhaps this is why their presence feels necessary. Perhaps this is why their absence later feels unbearable. Archaeologists today read these records with mixed awe. A society so ordered, so coordinated, yet entirely dependent on belief. When belief wavers, everything else follows. The tablets show confidence, but also hints of anxiety. Rituals become more frequent over time. Words of reassurance multiply. Stars wheel overhead unchanged. The same sky that crowns the king crowns the farmer. Cosmic time does not distinguish rank. Perhaps someone notices this, perhaps not, but the sky remains a silent equalizer. As the king retires for the night, lamps dim, the city settles. Authority sleeps, but never fully. It must rise again tomorrow, renewed, reauthorized, reaffirmed. The golden age continues, sustained by ritual, belief, and borrowed power. Yet even here, in the height of order, something subtle begins to strain. Dependence deepens. The gods feel slightly farther away, and beneath the calm routine, questions wait quietly, preparing for what comes next. The tablets speak softly here, but with weight. Their surfaces are worn smooth by time, edges softened, yet the marks remain firm. When light passes over them, certain lines catch shadow more deeply, as if insisting on attention. These are not distant gods being described. These are gods who act. Imagine a season when the river does not behave as expected. The floods come early, stronger, swallowing fields before harvest. Mud fills homes, grain stores collapse. The city gathers in uncertainty. Priests consult the tablets, rituals increase. The Anunnaki are invoked not as observers, but as decision makers. Something must have displeased them. When the texts describe divine intervention, they do so without drama. A god commands, a god withholds, a god alters fate. The tone remains calm, almost administrative. This is striking. Intervention is not chaos, it is correction. The Anunnaki were not just watchers, but regulators of balance. Now, a single story unfolds slowly from the fragments, a ritual of appeasement recorded across several tablets. The city prepares for days. Offerings are gathered, animals washed, vessels polished. On the chosen night, priests ascend the ziggurat under a sky dense with stars. Chants rise and fall rhythmically. Silence follows each verse. At dawn, the ritual ends. Days later, the floods recede. The record notes this simply: cause and effect, implied, never explained. Some scholars interpret this as symbolic narrative, ritual coinciding with natural cycles. Others suggest the people truly believed they had negotiated with power. Perhaps belief itself shaped behavior, altering how the community responded to crisis. Or perhaps the timing felt too precise to dismiss. The tablets do not argue, they record. Sensory details anchor these moments. The smell of wet earth after retreating water, the cool relief in the air, the sound of rebuilding. Life resumes. Gratitude spreads. The Anunnaki are praised. The gods have listened. Order returns. But intervention is not always gentle. Other texts speak of judgment, cities punished, kings removed, fate altered suddenly. These passages are brief, restrained, almost uncomfortable. Perhaps scribes did not linger on fear. Perhaps they assumed understanding. The gods act when balance is lost. That is enough. Philosophically, this suggests a worldview where morality is structural rather than emotional. Good and bad are not personal. They are functional. Actions disrupt order or preserve it. The Anunnaki respond accordingly. This is not compassion as we understand it. It is maintenance. Stars continue overhead, indifferent. Cosmic time moves steadily while human time stumbles. The contrast is quiet but powerful. The gods intervene, yet remain bound to larger cycles. They correct, but do not control everything. Perhaps this limitation matters. Unanswered questions remain. Did people ever doubt divine causation? Did failed rituals occur and go unrecorded? Were natural explanations ever considered? Archaeology cannot hear doubt clearly. It hears what was written, not what was whispered. As centuries pass, records of intervention feel more frequent, more urgent. Perhaps society grows more anxious. Perhaps disasters accumulate. Or perhaps the gods are invoked more often as systems strain. The relationship tightens, dependence deepens. The Anunnaki are fully embedded now in weather, law, success, failure. They are not distant myths. They are mechanisms through which the world makes sense. Yet even mechanisms even systems require energy to maintain. As we Winokins move forward, intervention will give way to something quieter. Subtle signs that the gods, once so involved, may be stepping back. And in that retreat, a new kind of silence will begin to form. Change rarely announces itself. It arrives quietly, almost politely, like a pause between familiar sounds. In the later Sumerian tablets, this pause becomes noticeable. The clay is the same. The symbols remain precise. Yet the tone feels altered. Something once close now feels slightly farther away. Imagine standing in the temple courtyard at dawn. Stone beneath your feet holds the night's coolness. Incense smoke rises thinly, slower than before. Priests chant familiar words, but their voices linger after each phrase, as if listening for response. Silence follows, not empty silence, but expectant stillness. Long before any god is said to depart, routine begins to change. Rituals grow more elaborate. Offerings increase in number and precision. Calendars fill with additional observances. Perhaps this reflects devotion deepening. Perhaps it reflects uncertainty growing. When presence feels less certain, effort intensifies naturally. When scholars examine tablets from different periods, they notice subtle shifts. Early texts state divine action plainly. Later texts explain, justify, clarify. Where once a god commanded, now context surrounds the command. The language compensates for distance. Words stretch to fill space once occupied by presence. Stars continue their patient movement overhead. The same constellations rise, unchanged. Yet their interpretation becomes more systematic. Astronomical records grow detailed. Observations lengthen. Perhaps humans look upward more carefully when guidance below feels quieter. The sky remains reliable when voices fade. Daily life continues without collapse. Markets function. Laws are enforced. Kings still rule by divine mandate. But weight increases. Decisions feel heavier. Errors feel riskier. Ritual precision becomes essential. The gods must be addressed correctly now. Margin for interpretation narrows. Perhaps withdrawal begins not with departure, but with delay. Prayers answered later. Signs requiring interpretation. Dreams replacing encounters. Guidance becoming symbolic rather than direct. Maybe the Anunnaki are stepping back intentionally, or perhaps cycles demand it. The tablets do not explain motive. Sensory details support this shift. Temples grow busier, processions lengthen, bells ring more often. Yet the quiet between rituals feels deeper. Silence presses rather than soothes. Stillness becomes something to manage rather than embrace. Archaeology records material change alongside textual shift. Temple construction slows. Artistic depictions of gods become more symbolic, less narrative. Writing emphasizes law and record over mythic action. These patterns are observable, measurable. Meaning remains interpretive. Perhaps society responds to absence by strengthening structure. When guidance fades, systems tighten. Authority consolidates. Ritual replaces relationship. The divine becomes framework rather than presence. This transition feels subtle, but transformative. Unanswered questions hover gently. Did people notice the change clearly? Did some deny it? Did others accept it calmly? Archaeology cannot hear emotion precisely. It records pattern, and the pattern suggests adjustment, adaptation, preparation. Silence plays an increasing role. Gods speak less often. Omens require interpretation. Dreams become ambiguous. Faith shifts inward. Meaning must be inferred rather than received. This demands patience, attention, humility. Philosophically, this moment matters deeply. A society built on divine immediacy must respond when immediacy fades. Faith can deepen or fracture. Authority can tighten or soften. The response shapes what follows. Perhaps this is the true test of civilization. The Anunnaki remain present in name, still invoked, still respected. But presence is no longer assumed. It must be requested, interpreted, earned. The relationship has changed, even if no proclamation marks it. Stars continue their slow arcs overhead. Cosmic time does not pause for human uncertainty. The sky remains constant. The land remains patient. Only perception shifts. Awareness grows that guidance may not arrive as before. Perhaps this thinning prepares humanity for independence, or perhaps it signals loss. The tablets do not judge. They record effort, not outcome. They show humanity leaning harder into ritual, structure, memory. Even language reflects adjustment. Phrases repeat more often. Assurance becomes necessary. Words of praise lengthen. Fear is not expressed directly, but effort speaks quietly. This period does not feel like collapse. It feels like tension, like holding something carefully that feels fragile, like balancing without knowing how long balance can last. Modern readers often miss this subtlety. They search for catastrophe, but catastrophe comes later. This moment is quieter, more human, more uncertain. The gods are still above, still named, still honored, but they are no longer felt walking among people. Their voices no longer interrupt daily life. Their instructions no longer arrive unmediated. Perhaps this is what withdrawal truly means. Not disappearance, but distance. Not abandonment, but transition. The gods step back, and humanity must learn to listen differently. As night falls, temples quiet, lamps dim, priests withdraw. The city settles beneath stars that have never left. Silence spreads evenly across stone and street. In that silence, something shifts permanently. The golden age does not end abruptly. It loosens, it releases its grip, making space for interpretation, speculation, and longing. And within that space, questions gather, quietly, patiently, preparing for what comes next. When mystery deepens and hidden dimensions wait to be explored, the sky does not announce itself. It is simply there, vast, patient, unchanged by human concern. Long before cities rise or tablets harden in the sun, stars trace their quiet paths overhead. Night after night, patterns repeat. Movements remain steady. For the Sumerians, this constancy is not decoration. It is instruction. Imagine standing atop a ziggurat at night. The stone beneath your feet still holds warmth from the day. Wind moves softly across skin. Below, the city rests in darkness. Above, the heavens open wide. Stars appear sharper here, closer, almost deliberate. Height offers clarity. Distance reveals order. The tablets speak of the sky with precision. Certain stars are named. Certain movements recorded. Venus is tracked carefully. Its cycle observed across years. Modern scholars recognize these as some of the earliest astronomical records known. Mainstream interpretation sees practicality, agriculture, ritual timing, seasonal planning. Yet, the care feels deeper than necessity alone. The sky was not merely a clock, it was a message. Movements above were believed to correspond with events below. When a star rose unexpectedly, it mattered. When a planet disappeared, it was noted. Perhaps the Anunnaki were thought to dwell there, or perhaps the sky simply represented order itself. Either way, attention remained constant. Silence shapes observation. Priests watch without speaking. Hours pass quietly. The sky does not respond to urgency. It demands patience. In stillness, meaning accumulates slowly. Perhaps this waiting itself is sacred. Perhaps knowledge grows best when nothing else happens. Modern archaeology confirms deliberate alignment. Temples orient toward solstices. Processional paths mirror celestial angles. These findings are measurable, verifiable. Astronomy software confirms dates. Science explains how alignments occurred, but not why they mattered so deeply. Symbolism bridges that gap. The ziggurat reflects layered cosmos, earth below, heavens above, movement between realms. Architecture becomes philosophy in stone. The Anunnaki are not just gods, but mediators of cosmic balance. The sky is not distant, it is integrated. Perhaps alignment reminded people of scale. Human lives move quickly, stars move slowly. When aligned, humanity is placed within something larger. This perspective may comfort, it may discipline, it may humble. The tablets do not explain, they assume understanding. Alternative interpretations persist quietly. Some note precision that feels advanced for the period. What if observational techniques were more refined than assumed? What if knowledge was inherited rather than discovered independently? What if systems existed that left no trace? These questions remain speculative, but persistent. Stillness returns whenever certainty fades. The sky neither confirms nor denies. It continues. Planets wander, constellations rise. The same stars that watched Sumer still shine now. That continuity becomes part of the mystery itself. Perhaps the Anunnaki were associated with the heavens because the heavens felt eternal, reliable, unchanging. Or perhaps stories preserve memory of beings believed to come from above. Both interpretations coexist without conflict. The sky allows room. Scientific understanding adds layers without erasing wonder. Astronomy explains motion. Archaeology explains context. Yet meaning remains interpretive. The hidden dimension persists not because data is lacking, but because meaning cannot be measured fully. When divine presence below thins, attention above intensifies. The heavens grow more important as guidance. The sky becomes reassurance. Something remains constant when voices grow quiet. Silence deepens during observation. Stars do not speak, they shine. Their language is repetition, reliability, patience. The Sumerians respond in kind, watching, recording, waiting. Perhaps this relationship shapes thought itself, a worldview where order exists independently of human desire, where meaning is discovered through alignment rather than command, where gods reflect cosmic principles rather than personal will. Even today, researchers continue studying these alignments. New software reveals subtler patterns. Excavations uncover additional orientation clues. Knowledge expands incrementally, yet the core question remains untouched. Why did this matter so much? The sky remains unchanged by inquiry. It offers light, not explanation. Its patience outlasts civilizations. Its silence absorbs interpretation without resistance. As night settles again over ancient ruins, stars resume their familiar paths. The heavens hold patterns we can trace, and meanings we still debate. Beneath it all, some truths remain unseen, waiting patiently, beyond certainty, beyond reach. The tablets grow careful at this point, not dramatic, not elaborate, careful, words narrow, descriptions shorten. Something moves between realms, and the scribes seem aware that language can only follow so far. What remains is suggestion rather than explanation, shape without certainty. Imagine holding a clay tablet still cool from the earth. The surface is worn smooth by time. Lines cut into it catch shadow unevenly. A phrase speaks of ascent, of brightness, of movement upward. The tablet does not pause to clarify. It records the moment, then continues. Perhaps explanation felt unnecessary. Perhaps it was assumed. In several Sumerian texts, gods are described traveling between heaven and earth. They ride, they ascend, they return. The language is symbolic, yet specific. Chariots appear, radiant platforms, pathways through the sky. Mainstream scholars interpret these descriptions as metaphor, power translated into imagery familiar to human experience. Kings ride chariots, therefore gods do as well. This reading is cautious, comparative, consistent with mythological patterns. Yet other readers notice restraint. If these passages were meant to impress, they would overflow with imagery. Instead, detail is minimal. Light, sound, direction, no spectacle. This economy of description feels intentional. Perhaps the scribes documented rather than imagined. Or perhaps the knowledge was considered sacred, not to be elaborated. Silence surrounds these texts. There's no excitement recorded, no fear, no awe exaggerated, just movement noted and left behind. The gods ascend, and the narrative continues. This absence of drama unsettles modern expectation. We expect miracles to be described loudly. These are not. Alternative interpretations persist quietly. Some suggest ancient witnesses may have encountered phenomena beyond their cultural framework. If unfamiliar technology appeared, language would default to known symbols. Light becomes radiance, sound becomes thunder, movement becomes chariot. These ideas remain speculative, yet they endure because the texts allow them. Modern archaeology offers no physical confirmation, no remnants, no materials recovered, no structures clearly designed for departure. Science pauses here. It acknowledges absence. This restraint matters. It prevents premature conclusion. Mystery remains intact rather than forced into certainty. Perhaps these accounts reflect spiritual ascent rather than physical movement. Many cultures describe gods withdrawing from material engagement, the soul returning to origin, the divine retreating beyond reach. The Sumerians may have expressed this through imagery shaped by their world. Stairways, platforms, vehicles, symbols built from lived experience. Yet another question lingers. Why emphasize departure at all? Why record ascent if presence alone was symbolic? Something about leaving mattered enough to preserve. The direction is always upward, away, beyond. This directional consistency invites reflection. Stillness returns when questions grow large. The tablets do not argue. They do not persuade. They simply sit. Clay does not insist on interpretation. It waits. Readers bring their assumptions. The artifact remains unchanged. Perhaps the most telling detail is continuity. References to ascent appear across multiple texts, multiple cities, multiple centuries. Consistency suggests shared understanding. Whether symbolic or experiential, the idea was stable enough to repeat accurately. Imagine a priest watching the night sky after recording such a passage. Stars move slowly, no sound, no disruption. If something had departed, the sky would hold it briefly, then resume its rhythm. Silence would return. That silence feels preserved in the writing itself. Some scholars suggest these descriptions function to legitimize authority. Gods who could leave could also return. Absence did not mean loss of power. It reinforced transcendence. The Anunnaki did not fade. They withdrew deliberately. This interpretation aligns with theological evolution. Others imagine memory at work, communities witnessing extraordinary events, preserving them cautiously, not elaborating, not dramatizing, just recording what mattered. These ideas remain controversial, but persistent. We may never know what ancient scribes believed they were documenting. Did they see metaphor? Did they preserve memory? Did belief shift over generations? Archaeology cannot access certainty here. It only presents layers. Patience becomes essential. To sit with multiple possibilities without urgency. to accept that some questions resist resolution. The vehicles of the gods may never be identified, because they may never have existed as objects, or they may have existed in forms that leave no trace. What matters is not mechanism, but meaning. The texts emphasize movement away rather than arrival, transition rather than presence. The Anunnaki are defined not only by what they did, but by where they went. This focus prepares the reader quietly. Presence thins. Guidance becomes distant. Authority transforms. The gods are no longer among people in the same way. Departure is not an event, but a condition. As we move deeper into these hidden dimensions, language grows quieter. Symbols replace action. Meaning slips beneath the surface. The unseen becomes central, and somewhere between metaphor and memory, the mystery continues, not demanding belief, not insisting on disbelief, simply waiting, patient, unresolved, like the sky itself, holding movement without sound and silence without end. The departure does not arrive as a moment. There is no final announcement etched into clay, no closing ceremony, no last command spoken from the heavens. Instead, the language begins to thin, references shorten. Actions once described directly are now implied. Presence fades not with drama, but with distance. Imagine a scribe seated alone in a quiet room. Light enters through a narrow opening. Dust floats slowly in the air. His stylus pauses more often now. Where earlier tablets described gods acting openly, these lines speak of return, withdrawal, remaining above. The phrasing feels careful, almost restrained. Something important is being handled gently. Some tablets suggest the Anunnaki returned to the heavens. Others imply they stepped back from daily governance. Authority shifts downward. Lesser gods take over tasks once overseen directly. Human institutions gain responsibility. Mainstream scholarship interprets this as theological evolution. Gods become more abstract as societies mature. This pattern appears elsewhere in human history. Yet, certain phrases resist complete abstraction. Descriptions of ascent, brightness, gates closing, remain directional. They imply movement rather than transformation. These passages are brief, unelaborated. They do not argue for interpretation. They simply record. This restraint invites alternative reading without demanding it. Silence surrounds these accounts. There is no celebration of independence, no relief expressed. Instead, rituals intensify, offerings increase, prayers lengthen. Absence feels unsettling rather than empowering. Perhaps humanity was not prepared for distance. Perhaps guidance had become essential. Archaeology reflects this shift materially. Temple construction slows. Monumental building decreases. Artistic depictions of gods become symbolic rather than narrative. Writing focuses increasingly on law, contracts, administration. Divine action recedes from daily record. These patterns are measurable. Their meaning remains open. Perhaps the gods withdrew gradually. Presence thinning across generations. Memory replacing encounter. Guidance turning symbolic. This slow transition would feel natural from within. Only in hindsight does it appear as departure. The tablets preserve process rather than event. Stars remain unchanged overhead. The same sky that once framed descent now frames absence. Cosmic time continues without interruption. This contrast feels significant. The heavens endure. Presence does not. Perhaps this observation shaped ancient thought more deeply than recorded. Some alternative interpretations imagine a more literal separation. What if conditions changed? What if presence required circumstances no longer available? Environmental shifts, social instability, cosmic cycles. These ideas remain speculative. They persist because the texts allow room. Patience is required here. Evidence does not demand resolution. It invites reflection. Perhaps the Anunnaki left because their role was complete. Perhaps because staying would prevent growth. Or perhaps because cycles simply turn indifferent to readiness. Stillness becomes more prominent in later texts. Gods speak less. Dreams replace encounters. Omens replace instruction. Interpretation replaces conversation. Faith becomes internal rather than interactive. This transformation alters humanity's relationship with meaning itself. We may never know how ancient people experience this change emotionally. Did they feel loss? Did they feel relief? Did they adapt gradually? Archaeology cannot measure feeling. It records effort, and effort increases where certainty fades. Language reflects adjustment. Assurance phrases repeat. Praise lengthens. Fear is not stated, but implied through action. When confidence weakens, ritual compensates. This pattern appears repeatedly across cultures. The departure accounts never state finality. The gods are not said to disappear forever. They withdraw. They remain above. They watch. Distance replaces intimacy. Authority remains, but presence changes form. Perhaps this ambiguity is intentional. A god who leaves completely loses relevance. A god who remains distant retains power. The Anunnaki become cosmic rather than local, eternal rather than immediate. This shift aligns with expanding worldview. Modern scholars debate whether departure represents loss or transition, whether gods left or humanity changed. Both interpretations coexist. Neither resolves fully. Mystery remains a feature, not a flaw. Still today, researchers uncover new fragments, reinterpret signs, compare translations. Each discovery refines understanding without closing the question. Departure resists final explanation. What remains undeniable is transition. Something ended, something else began. The world did not collapse. Civilization continued. But intimacy was lost. Guidance once assumed now required interpretation. Perhaps this is the quiet legacy of departure. Responsibility deepens. Meaning must be generated rather than received. Faith becomes reflective rather than responsive. Humanity steps into a different relationship with the unseen. As night settles over ancient ruins, silence gathers evenly across stone and sand. The gods are no longer among people in the same way, but memory remains. Ritual persists. Language carries echo. The departure does not erase the Anunnaki. It transforms them from presence into memory, from instruction into mystery. And so the gods withdraw, not with thunder, but with quiet distance, leaving behind a world shaped by their influence, and a silence that still invites listening, patient, unresolved, waiting. The questions do not arrive loudly. They emerge slowly, like shapes forming in low light. When modern scholars sit with the Sumerian tablets, they do so from many directions. Training shapes attention. Assumptions guide interpretation. The clay remains unchanged, but meaning shifts depending on where one stands. Some scholars believe the Anunnaki are mythological figures shaped by social need. In this view, gods reflect the structures humans create to manage complexity. Authority above mirrors authority below. Divine law reinforces human law. The Anunnaki represent order, not beings. Their departure symbolizes cultural maturation, humanity learning to govern itself without constant divine oversight. This Interpretation fits known patterns. Across cultures, gods grow distant as institutions strengthen. Myth gives way to law. Ritual gives way to administration. The divine becomes abstract. This explanation is careful, grounded, consistent with comparative anthropology. Yet it leaves certain details unresolved. Others suggest the Anunnaki are ancestral memory, not gods in origin, but powerful leaders, remembered and elevated over generations. Perhaps early rulers possessed knowledge or influence that felt extraordinary. Over time, memory transformed leadership into divinity. The departure then reflects collapse, migration, or loss of centralized authority. This view explains structure, but not consistency across regions. A few imagine something more literal. They ask whether ancient texts preserve encounters misunderstood by later ages. What if the language of gods, ascent, radiance, reflects observation rather than imagination? What if unfamiliar phenomena were described using available symbols? These thinkers do not insist. They speculate gently, aware of evidentiary limits. We may never know which interpretation aligns closest to lived experience. The tablets do not explain motive. They preserve outcome. They record what mattered, not why it happened. Perhaps this distinction matters more than certainty. Connections appear when looking outward. Stories of gods descending and departing appear across cultures. Egypt speaks of divine kingship fading. Mesoamerica tells of creators withdrawing. India describes ages where gods recede. Some scholars see shared psychology. Others see diffusion of ideas. A few wonder about shared memory. Perhaps coincidence explains it. Perhaps not. Maybe the human mind naturally frames the unknown as divine. Maybe the sky invites projection. Or maybe repeated patterns suggest repeated experience. We may never know. And perhaps that uncertainty is not failure, but invitation. Philosophically, each interpretation carries implication. If gods are symbolic, then humanity projects meaning to survive chaos. If gods were ancestral, memory reshapes power into reverence. If gods were literal visitors, humanity's place in the cosmos shifts dramatically. Each view humbles us differently. We may never know how ancient people understood their own stories. Did belief feel literal? Did metaphor coexist with faith? Did understanding shift depending on circumstance? Archaeology cannot measure belief. It infers from pattern, not emotion. Perhaps the most honest position is patience, to sit with multiple possibilities without urgency, to allow science and imagination to coexist without competition, to accept that certainty is not always the goal of inquiry. Maybe mystery itself has value. It slows thought, encourages listening, prevents closure that oversimplifies complexity. The Anunnaki endure because they resist resolution. They remain open enough to receive new meaning. Skeptics play an essential role here. They remind us to ground speculation, to respect evidence, to acknowledge limits. Without skepticism, wonder becomes fantasy. Without wonder, skepticism becomes hollow. Balance matters. Dreamers play a role as well. They ask questions beyond available data. They explore implications. They imagine continuity beyond fragments. Without dreamers, inquiry stagnates. Without grounding, it drifts. The conversation requires both. Modern research continues quietly. New tablets are translated. Old signs reconsidered. Meanings refined. Each revision shifts understanding slightly. Knowledge remains fluid. Finality remains elusive. We may never know whether the Anunnaki were gods, memories, metaphors, or something else entirely. We may never know why departure mattered so deeply. We may never know what ancient witnesses believed they saw. Yet something persists beneath uncertainty. The need to understand origin, authority, absence, presence. The Anunnaki. Story survives because it touches these enduring questions. Perhaps this is why the tablets remain compelling. They do not command belief. They invite reflection. They allow space for doubt, curiosity, and quiet awe. As scholars debate, skeptics question, and dreamers imagine, the clay waits unchanged. It holds every interpretation without preference. It offers no answers, only continuity. And in that continuity, meaning continues to unfold, not fixed, not final, but alive, patient, and open, waiting for each generation to listen anew. The question does not press, it lingers. It settles into the quiet spaces between words and waits there patiently. Why would beings described as powerful, organized, deeply involved in human affairs choose to withdraw? The tablets record movement, not motive. And so, the space where explanation should be remains open. Some scholars believe departure reflects a natural progression of belief. As societies grow more complex, gods become less immediate. Direct instruction gives way to abstraction. Divine command transforms into principle. In this view, the Anunnaki did not leave abruptly. They dissolved into systems. Their authority absorbed into law, ritual, conscience. Presence becomes internal rather than external. This interpretation aligns with patterns seen elsewhere. Early cultures often describe gods walking among people. Later traditions speak of distance, transcendence, inaccessibility. Perhaps withdrawal marks maturity. Humanity learning to govern without constant oversight. Yet this explanation does not fully account for the emphasis on leaving itself. Why record absence so carefully? Others suggest environmental and social pressure shaped perception. Climate instability, flooding, resource strain, political fragmentation. When systems fail, faith adjusts. Gods feel distant when outcomes disappoint. Perhaps divine withdrawal reflects human uncertainty rather than divine choice. The gods did not leave. Confidence in them shifted. This reading grounds departure in lived experience. When crops fail despite ritual, explanation must adapt. Distance becomes interpretation. Yet the texts emphasize return to heaven, ascent, separation. These phrases suggest movement, not merely reinterpretation. A different theory considers cyclical purpose. What if arrival and departure were always intended? Guidance given, then withdrawn. Instruction offered, then tested. Perhaps the Anunnaki were never meant to remain permanently. Perhaps independence was the goal. Or perhaps cycles simply turn without concern for readiness. We may never know whether ancient people viewed departure as loss or necessity. The tablets do not describe grief clearly. They describe effort, increased ritual, heightened attention. Silence feels heavier when explanation is absent. Stillness becomes something to navigate rather than rest within. Alternative thinkers ask different questions. What if leaving was literal? What if presence required conditions that changed? Environmental factors, social conditions, cosmic cycles. What if departure was not symbolic, but situational? These ideas remain speculative. They persist because they cannot be fully dismissed, nor fully supported. We may never know what ancient witnesses believed they saw. Memory filters experience. Language reshapes it. Writing preserves fragments, not moments. We inherit result rather than perception. Perhaps this distance is itself meaningful. cross-cultural echoes deepen curiosity. Many traditions speak of gods withdrawing, ascending, retreating behind veils. The pattern appears often enough to invite reflection. Maybe it reflects shared psychology, maybe shared experience, or maybe humanity's evolving relationship with authority. We may never know. Philosophically, departure carries implication regardless of interpretation. When guidance fades, responsibility increases. Meaning must be generated rather than received. Faith becomes reflective rather than responsive. This transition is difficult, but perhaps necessary. Growth often follows absence. Maybe departure was not a single event, but a long process. Presence thinning over generations, interaction fading into tradition, memory becoming myth. In this sense, the gods never truly leave. They change form, they persist in language, ritual, thought. We may never know why leaving mattered so deeply describes who recorded it, but we can feel that it did. Emphasis suggests impact, something ended, something else began. The story turns at this point, quietly, without announcement. Perhaps departure also protected divinity. Distance preserves authority. A god too present becomes accountable. A god withdrawn becomes eternal. The Anunnaki remain powerful precisely because they are no longer available. Absence maintains awe. Stillness surrounds this question. There is no urgency in not knowing. The story has survived. Millennia without resolution. It does not require one now. Mystery is not a flaw. It is part of the inheritance. Modern readers often seek closure, but ancient texts rarely provide it. They reflect lived uncertainty rather than resolved doctrine. Perhaps we misread them when we expect answers instead of patterns. We may never know whether departure was chosen, necessary, or perceived. We may never know whether it was literal, symbolic, or both. We may never know what ancient people felt as presence thinned. Yet something remains beneath uncertainty, a shared human experience of guidance, loss, adaptation. The Anunnaki story endures because it touches these universal moments: arrival, instruction, absence, responsibility. Perhaps the question of leaving matters more than its answer. It invites reflection on how we respond when guidance fades, how societies adapt, how meaning is preserved without certainty. As listeners, we sit in that space now, not demanding resolution, not resisting mystery, simply acknowledging that some questions remain open because they must. Why leave it all? Perhaps because staying forever would prevent growth. Perhaps because cycles turn. Perhaps because meaning requires distance to endure. Or perhaps we may never know, and that may be enough. The question rests now, quiet, unanswered, still present, like stars above ancient ruins. It continues without explanation, patient, constant, inviting reflection rather than conclusion. The land does not forget quickly. Even when walls collapse and streets fill with sand, something remains beneath the surface. Memory settles where stone once stood. Names echo faintly where voices once gathered. When the Anunnaki withdraw from daily presence, their influence does not vanish. It changes form. It becomes quieter, slower, carried forward in ways less visible. Long after divine instruction is no longer felt directly, stories continue moving through human lives. Oral. Tradition carries them first. Elders speak carefully, children listen. The shape of the story softens at the edges, but its center holds. Gods who came down, gods who taught, gods who left. These ideas survive because they are repeated, not because they are explained. Writing preserves part of this memory, but not all of it. Clay tablets crack, edges break. Entire libraries are buried deliberately or lost to flood and fire. What survives does so unevenly. Memory becomes selective. Chance plays a role. Perhaps this randomness protects mystery. Perhaps it distorts truth. Either way, silence fills the gaps. When later civilizations rise on the same land, they inherit more than soil. They inherit fragments of belief. Akkadians adapt Sumerian gods. Babylonians rename them. Assyrians reshape their roles. The Anunnaki shift, merge, recede. Yet their presence lingers beneath new names. Memory transforms rather than disappears. This continuity matters. It suggests that ideas persist even when structures fall. Divine figures may change, but the questions they represent endure. Authority, origin, absence, guidance. These themes pass forward intact, even when language evolves. Modern rediscovery begins quietly. In the 19th century, European excavators dig into ancient mounds in Mesopotamia. At first, they search for monumental art. Instead, they uncover clay, thousands of tablets stacked, buried, preserved by accident and intention. Writing older than expected. History extended backward by millennia. Scholars work slowly to understand what they have found. Scripts must be decoded, languages reconstructed, signs compared across fragments. Years pass before meaning emerges. Translation becomes interpretation. Each choice reshapes understanding. Even now, readings continue to evolve. Still today, archaeologists uncover new material. Excavations resume seasonally. Ground-penetrating technology reveals buried structures. Tablets, once thought administrative, reveal mythic lines upon closer reading. A single sign reinterpreted can alter an entire narrative. Knowledge remains provisional. Even now, debates continue quietly. Academic journals publish revisions. Conferences gather specialists. New photographs reveal faded impressions invisible to earlier generations. Technology refines access, but not certainty. Mystery persists alongside progress. Patterns repeat across time. Civilizations rise, organize meaning, then fade. Others inherit fragments and build again. Remembering and forgetting move in cycles. Perhaps this is inevitable. Perhaps memory is never meant to be complete. Gaps invite interpretation. Silence invites listening. Stars remain unchanged overhead. The same constellations that guided Sumerian priests shine today. Their light reaches us across unimaginable distance. They witnessed rise, withdrawal, rediscovery. Cosmic time moves independently of belief. This continuity anchors everything else. Even now, when we read these ancient texts, we participate in the cycle. We recover what was nearly lost. We interpret what was never explained. We project meaning shaped by our own time. In doing so, we become carriers of memory rather than observers. The Anunnaki may no longer be present in the world of action, but they remain present in thought, in curiosity, in the human impulse to understand origin and authority. Their story survives because it addresses absence as much as presence. Perhaps this is the deepest legacy. Not instruction, but inquiry. Not answers, but space. The Anunnaki leave behind a question that does not close. How do humans live when guidance fades? How does meaning persist without certainty? Stone holds pressure and time without opinion. Clay holds memory patiently. Wind moves across ruins without preference. These elements outlast belief systems. They remind us that continuity does not require explanation. It simply continues, even now. The land between the rivers holds buried voices. Tablets remain unexcavated. Stories remain untranslated. Meaning remains incomplete. The past has not finished speaking. It only speaks slowly. When we listen, quietly, without urgency, we honor that pace. We allow ancient voices to exist without forcing them into modern certainty. We respect intelligence, both ancient and contemporary, by allowing mystery to remain. The legacy of the Anunnaki is not proof. It is persistence. It is the endurance of story across collapse and rediscovery. It is the survival of questions across centuries. As listeners, we stand within that legacy, not as judges, not as believers or skeptics alone, but as witnesses. The story continues not because it is solved, but because it is shared. Memory passes forward through attention, through patience, through willingness to sit with uncertainty. This is how ancient voices remain alive. The gods may have withdrawn, but the questions they left behind remain active. They move quietly through time, settling into each generation that pauses to listen. And now, they settle briefly with you, not demanding answer, only awareness before drifting onward, carried gently into the silence that follows. And now, we return gently to where you are, to the quiet room around you, to the slow rhythm of your breath, to the weight of your body resting without effort. The night has continued while we listened. Time has moved forward in its patient way. Nothing needed to be solved. Nothing needed to be decided. The ancient world has settled back into its place, not distant, but folded quietly into the present. Outside this moment, the same elements endure. Stone still remembers pressure and time. Wind still moves across open ground without urgency. Silence still gathers where voices fade. The ruins of cities once filled with prayer now rest beneath sky and sand, touched by moonlight, warmed by sun, holding memory without words. They do not ask to be understood completely. They simply remain. Above it all, stars continue their slow paths. The same constellations that guided Sumerian priests still rise and set. Their light has crossed unimaginable distance to reach this moment, unchanged by belief or doubt. They watch the Anunnaki arrive in story. They watch them withdraw into silence. They watch now as we breathe, as we wonder, as we rest. Cosmic time does not hurry. It waits. Perhaps this is the lesson that lingers most softly, that presence and absence are part of the same rhythm, that arrival does not require permanence, that departure does not erase meaning. The Anunnaki were not just figures in clay or sky, but expressions of humanity's need to understand order, guidance, and the quiet that follows when answers grow faint. We may never know who they were, or what truly happened when their presence thinned. We may never know whether the tablets preserve memory, metaphor, or something that resists those boundaries. And yet, the not knowing feels gentle here. It does not disturb the stillness. It belongs to it. Mystery is not a wound. It is a space. Notice how your thoughts slow now, how questions soften rather than sharpen. This is not forgetting. It is resting, like ruins at dusk, meaning does not disappear when light fades. It waits. It settles into another form. Understanding does not always arrive as conclusion. Sometimes it arrives as peace. Across centuries, civilizations have risen, believing they were guided by something beyond themselves. And across centuries, they have learned to continue when that guidance felt distant. This pattern repeats quietly. Memory passes forward. Stone endures. Stars remain. Humanity listens, then speaks. then listens again. In this moment, you are part of that continuity, not as a seeker demanding answers, but as a witness allowing stories to pass through you. The clay tablets have done their work. They have spoken, then grown quiet again. The land between the rivers has returned to night. The gods have stepped back into memory. Nothing more is required. If you listen closely now, you may notice the silence itself, not empty, not cold, but full, like a held breath that does not need to release. The same silence that surrounded the first fires on the plain. The same silence that followed the last recorded prayer. The same silence that waits patiently beneath every question. And so we let the story rest, without ending it. Wind still moves over ancient ground. Stars still watch without judgment. Stone still remembers what passed across it. And somewhere, beyond certainty, beyond explanation, the mystery continues. Quietly, gently, as you drift, and the night carries on.